Tom Schaefer, and I'm the director of the jazz band. Did you know that April is National Jazz Appreciation Month, JAM, a month-long celebration dedicated to honoring jazz as a unique American art form. Started in America. This was established in 2001 by the Smithsonian Institute. JAM aims to highlight the rich cultural heritage and enduring influence of jazz music. Throughout April, various events and activities are organized to celebrate jazz, culminating in the International Jazz Day on April 30th. This global event, initiated by UNESCO in 2011, and chaired by jazz legend Herbie Hancock, promotes peace and intellectual dialogue through the universal language of jazz. Jazz, made in America, enjoyed worldwide. And today's a special day because it's the birthday of Ella Fitzgerald and Duke Ellington. Both of them today. So, it's a very special month for jazz.
First of all, I want to thank Ohio University Southern's administration, the facilities crew, and the IT department for the use of this facility and for getting us all set up with logistical and technical arrangements. And thanks to Mr. Will Gilbert, who's the band director at Ironton High School. I think he's backstage. No, he's not in the green room, he's in Rotunda. I got him out of bed the other day, because there was spring break. He came over and they opened up the high school and we carted all that equipment in and got it all set up. Thank you so much. We appreciate that. This band, both the jazz and symphonic bands, next performance will be on Sunday, June 1st at 5:45, is that right, Matt? Oh, okay. 5:15. Matt Chuck, you said yes, he didn't know what it is. He's a director. 5:15 in Charleston, West Virginia for Symphony Sunday. That's the annual fundraiser for the West Virginia Symphony Orchestra. And another local group that some of us play in and some of you have heard, the brass band, the Tri-State, is also going to be performing there with several other groups from the Charleston, West Virginia area. Then this band will be back here in Ironton on July 1st. That's Tuesday. That will be for the annual patriotic concert. Feature the Jazz and Symphonic Band. That'll be at the Farmers Market, Tuesday, July 1st, 6:30. That performance is free. Unlike this one, which was $20, which you never paid. But I'll forgive you this time. The patriotic concert is also the first performance of the Ironton Council for the Arts 2025-26 performance series. If you don't know who we are, we've been here since 1980. We're a nonprofit. We have a 6-concert series, which kicks off with that, and then we have 6 subscription concerts, which are $15 each, or $50 for all 6. And we'll be promoting that and giving folks here in Ironton a chance to enjoy a patriotic concert without having to travel. So, if you're interested in our performance season, what our concerts are, who we are, we have 2 board members. We got Gary and we got Erica, and some of you got these slick little season brochures. Take one, they're free, just look at them. If you're interested in buying tickets or donating, we've got a form there. If you don't want to do that, but if you'd like to get on our mailing list, where I can update you on concerts, it's an email blast that I send out periodically. She can take care of you there. So that's all I got, guys.
long time, used to holler pretty loud. That was a song that was made famous by Gene Krupa way back in the 40s, early 40s, called Big Toys from Winnetka. Next we're going to play one, and the solos on it, yeah, let's get the solos. Pat McCoy, speaker. Dana McCoy, huh? They might be related, you know. On trumpet, George Davis on alto sax. Trombone. Next we're going to do one entitled Tuxedo Junction. And the solos we had on that was Greg Collinsworth on trumpet, on piano, popular back in the late 80s, I guess, somewhere back in there. Early 70s, late 80s, early
All
40s.
runs together, doesn't it?
Early 40s. Anyway, MacArthur Park. MacArthur Park. Not put this over there. Frank Hayes on the trombone solo. Next, we're going to play a song called I Can't Get Started. And we're going to feature in this is Wendy Wilson singing the vocals. Yay! And sort of a sad story in a way, I had arranged this and had one of our trumpet players to do a real nice solo along with this. Well, he went with the band, had hit the band, the chaperone him, but he drove his car, well, his transmission went out on him in Florida. So he's not here. He didn't think, he does a beautiful job, so I am going to do my best to cover the solo for him today, so don't throw anything at me. Ready? 1 and 2 and ready right now.
But
hand. Solos in that was Doug Smith on trombone and George Davis on the alto sax. We got two more for you folks. This next one called Leapfrog. This was played by Les Brown and his band of Renown. This was his theme song, if I'm not mistaken. We're not going to play it as fast as they did because they're pros. We're not quite there. A few of us might be, but some of us are not. Ready? 1, 2, 3. from George Davis again on alto saxophone. And Matt Chafin on trumpet. On alto saxophone. Harper on bass. And McCoy on the drums. Last one tonight from Tommy Dorsey's band around 1990, or 1990. That's before my time even. Wrong times, probably. Opus 1 by Tommy Dorsey band. Once you hear it, you'll probably remember it. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, and. Dana played the first trumpet. Thank you, trombone solo. Give us about 10 minutes to move the chairs around a little bit, and we'll start with the symphonic band for you. Thank you very much. It's a great honor.
All right, well, we are the Greater Huntington Huntington Symphonic Band, and we're going to open up the concert, or our portion of the concert, with a Randall Standridge piece called Kinetic Dances. Hope everybody's awake now after that one. Arm's gonna hurt. So our next one we're gonna do, this is a piece called Hartshorn, and this was written by a former Marshall University professor, Dr. Paul Weir, and this year would have made his 100th birthday, so it's kind of an appropriate year to do this piece. This was also his first published piece. I know we have some people in our band that knew Dr. Weir. He was at Marshall. He had retired before I got there. But I knew him as the orchestra who sat in the back of the orchestra and the double bass. I knew people that said, "That's Dr. Weir." Okay, I don't know who that is. But I learned he was kind of notorious in his day as a theory professor and taught orchestration, stuff like that. He's also known for, anybody ever heard of Michael W. Smith? Yeah. Michael W. Smith went to Marshall and was a music major, took theory from Dr. Weir, and he failed him out of theory. Michael W. Smith has done very well, so I guess we can't fault him for that. But Dr. Weir was known as a very, very tough professor, and the students who went through there, he taught them very well. So Hartshorn, where does this name come from? This was actually the street that he lived on when he taught at Mount Union, Mount Union University of Mount Union. Words are hard today. So when he taught there, the street he lived on was Hartshorn Street. And Hartshorn comes from, that was the guy who started the university in Alliance, Ohio. So he wrote this piece about it. It was originally rejected by the publishing company, but he had entered it into a composition competition, and the piece won. And that publishing company had to publish the piece anyway, so kind of jokes on them. So this is Dr. Paul Weir's first piece, first published piece out of very many, called Hartshorn. next piece we're going to do started off as a commission by Time Magazine in 1962. They were looking for some brand new piano music, especially something written by a modern composer. And so they asked Aaron Copland to write a piano piece for young piano players. Copland even said about this piece when he first wrote it, it's like, even a third-year student should be able to play this. This isn't piano. But in 1964, Copland took the piano piece and turned it into a piece for chamber orchestra. And this also is not a chamber orchestra. So then, in 1991, a guy by the name of Merlin Patterson, that's a cool name, he took the orchestral version and wrote it out for band. So this is originally an Aaron Copland piano piece that's now written for band called Down a Country Lane. What concert would be complete without a march? We have to throw a march in there. But I like doing marches that are a little different. We've all heard the Sousa marches. I like to pick things that are just a little unusual or not Sousa. We do enough of that for our patriotic concert will be coming up in July. So the piece I picked out is called Army of the Nile. It's a British march, so it's a lot slower than what you're typically used to with a march. This was written by Kenneth J. Alford, which is a pseudonym. His real name was Major Frederick J. Ricketts, and he was known as the British March King, so kind of equivalent to our John Philip Sousa. So, oh, there it is. So he was the British March King. The title comes from a a branch of the British Army that was stationed in Northern Africa during World War II. And they had, there was 30,000 troops in this, in the Army of the Nile, and they were very successful in Northern Africa during World War II. So without further ado, this is Army of the Nile. So when you hear a title like On an American Spiritual, you kind of think very hymn-like, very slow piece, which is exactly how this one starts and ends, but not so much in the middle. So this piece is written by David Holsiger, and it's based on the hymn Were You There? It is typically heard around this time of year. It's usually heard around Easter. So the beginning is slow, the ending is slow, but the middle is really different. And what David Holsinger does is he takes the lyrics themselves and kind of makes the music fit to what the lyrics say. So if you're familiar with the piece, you know that the middle part is about the brutality of the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. So as you listen to this, a somber beginning, a somber end, but in the middle is not so much. So this is David Holsinger's On an American Spiritual. piece, I'm going to take a couple minutes to talk about this group. We are an all-volunteer band. Nobody here gets paid. I don't get paid for this. We do it because we just love making music. And we are always looking for some new members. So if you're somebody who maybe played in high school, played in college, and now you're more sitting up in the attic just gathering dust, now's a great time to pull it out. We'd love to have some new members. So we meet Thursday evenings at Benson Middle School in Huntington from 7 to 8. We won't be meeting this coming week because we always take a week off after a concert, one that lets me take a breath, and also get music ready for the next concert. So we won't be meeting this Thursday, but the week after that we will start up again. So we'd love to have some new members. So please come and join us. If you play a jazz-related instrument, the jazz band meets right after that from 8 to 9. So I'm sure they would also love to have some new jazz members too. So if you'd love to come and join us, we'd love to have you. I know Pat already mentioned a couple concerts we have coming up. We have one June 1st, Symphony Sunday in Charleston, which the jazz band is not playing on that one. It's just a symphonic band. We only get about 30 minutes to play, but it's a great concert. Lots of community groups play, and then it ends with the West Virginia Symphony playing. So fantastic concert. And then after that, we will do one in July, our patriotic concert. So that's the one we're getting ready to start rehearsing on. So if you'd like to join us, please come on out. We'd love to have you. So our next piece is a little bit different than anything we've done so far. Did anybody see Wicked?
Yeah!
Some of you? All right. Well, we're going to do the music of Wicked. I hope we can hold up to your expectations. And feel free to sing along. It'll cover up some of our wrong notes. This is a tough piece for him. I gave him a challenge, and they've risen to that challenge. So this is going to be the music of Wicked. Wicked, if you don't know, is an award-winning and just blockbuster of a show that was on Broadway. Has since been turned into a movie. I haven't seen it yet. I have mixed feelings because it's part one, and I know if I watch part one, I'm like, I need to see part two, and it's not out yet. So I haven't seen it yet. That's okay. Eventually, my wife wants to go see it, so I know she'll eventually drag me to it. But so if you don't know what the premise of the movie is, based off of a novel by Gregory Maguire. And Gregory Maguire, he does kind of some strange things. He likes to do like prequels to novels that already exist. So Wicked is essentially what happens to the characters from The Wizard of Oz, the Frank L. Baum novel. What happens to them before that novel takes place. So you meet the Wicked Witch of the West before she was the Wicked Witch of the West, and Glinda the Good Witch before she was Glinda the Good Witch. But fantastic musical. So this is selections from Wicked. That's all we have. That's all she wrote. I think I may take a nap after that one. But again, thank you all for coming out. Have a wonderful rest of your weekend. Thank you. Thank you.